A Tale of the Clone Wars, Hero of Cartao by Timothy Zahn, illustrated by Douglas Chaffee. Part 1, Hero's Call. 1 year after the Battle of Geonosis, Master Doriana, Amir Kursig's deep voice called, "We're here." Kinman Doriana awoke with a start, blinking his eyes against the sunlight streaming in through the shuttle's viewports. For a moment, he gazed at the landscape rolling beneath him, trying to remember where exactly he was. There had been so many systems, the disorientation cleared. He was on Cartao, major trading center for Prakala sector, carefully non-aligned in the war between the Republic and the Separatists, and home to, there it is, Ms. Kurses said. He turned the control stick delicately, rolling the shuttle slightly to the left to give Doriana a better look. Spaarti creations. Doriana gazed out the side viewport, impressed in spite of himself.
Preview.
Situated among a group of forested hills just north of the compact town of Fallon City, perhaps 3 kilometers northwest of the equally compact Triv spaceport, was a unique manufacturing plant known as Spaarti Creations. Over a kilometer across at its widest, it had the patchwork look of something that had repeatedly been added onto over the decades. The roof line echoed the frozen chaos with towers, heat exchangers, antennas, and sunlight poking out at apparently random spots along the building's overall 3-story height. There were no windows he could see, ventilation apparently being handled by a line of small, louvered air vents dotting the outer walls around about midway up the sides. Impressive, he commented. You think so? Korseg shrugged. Personally, I've always considered it an architectural version of a weed patch. No ordered organization anywhere. Ever been inside? No, but employees get to go in, the other said, his lip twisting with disgust and resentment. Them and the high and mighty, like me, Doriana. Kursiag glanced at him as if suddenly remembering just who his passenger was. No, I was thinking about Lord Benali's chums. He backtracked hastily. The Prakla Trade Council, that sort of crowd. You don't think much of them. Kursiag shrugged again, uncomfortably this time. It's nothing to do with me, he muttered. I've got a shuttle, I fly people places, that's all. I see, Doriana said, returning his attention to the manufacturing plant, now passing directly beneath them. Clearly, Kursiag didn't want to say any more, but then he didn't have to. Like everything else he ever did, Doriana had made sure to research Cartao before coming here and hiring this particular man to bring him across the sparsely settled planet just for Spaarti Creations. The cargo transport company Kursiag had once owned had been inadvertently run out of business 2 years earlier by a poorly worded regulation the Prakla Trade Council had issued after the Battle of Geonosis. Kursiag's appeal was still crawling its way through the system, but by now the issue was essentially moot. His company was gone, and he clearly blamed Lord Benali for it. What about the planet's satellite facilities, he asked, his eyes flickering around the forested areas north and west of the main facility. The buildings where they store raw materials and finished product. You mean the 3 outlinks? Right, Doriana said. Where are they? I don't exactly know, Kursiag said. The closest one's supposed to be about 3 kilometers northeast, just past the big gray-topped worker barracks thing, he pointed. Doriana said, peering into the distance. There was nothing showing in that direction that he could see. Well, camouflaged. Either by accident or by design. That could be useful. Where does Lord Benali live? There. Corsair pointed to the left as he bought the shuttle around in a wide semicircle. You see Fowlon City just south of that kilometer-wide stretch of grassland. And I see it, Doriana said. I don't think I've ever seen a city come to a stop that abruptly before. Except where there's a lake or a cliff to limit it, of course. It might as well be a cliff, Corsair stated. That particular line of grassland marks the southern edge of Spaarti land, and no one travels or builds there. The Kwanzak insist on it. Anyway, you see that big open area on the northeast edge of the city, butting up against the grass strip? Yes, Doriana said. It looked like a park, grassland, quite a few clumps of trees, large sections of sculpted bushes, with a few small buildings and a very large one. Even from this distance, the place reeked of wealth and power. On one of the low hills facing the plant, he could see a pair of figures standing together. The Benali's estate. You got it, Corsair stated. You seen enough? Doriana took a last look around, fixing the geography in his mind. Fowlon and Navwalk cities lay to the south and southeast of the plant, with the craggy red hills pushing up against the eastern ends of both cities. Triv Spaceport was to the east, with low, increasingly forested rolling hills to the north, and a small river winding its way between the two cities, and then between Fowlon and a spaceport. Yes, he told the pilot, resettling himself in his seat. Let's go see Lord Benali. They're turning around some more. They are turning around some more, said Kof Benali announced, shading his eyes with his hand as he peered outward into the sky. I think they might be coming here. Who? The people in the shuttle? Jafer Torles asked, his white hair blowing past his cheek as he gazed downward at the ground, trying to pick out the particular civivi wine he and the boy had been following for the past half hour. Yes, I know. You know who they are, Kof asked, frowning up at him. Did Dad say something to you about visitors? No, but he didn't need to. Torles assured the boy. It's been obvious for nearly a minute now. Oh, come on, Kof objected in that tone of impatience 12-year-old did so well. How could you? Simple logical deduction, Torles said in the pedantic instructor's tone. 73-year-olds did equally well. There was no reason for him to pass directly over the planet unless that was what they were specifically looking at. After realizing how little that gained them, the natural next step is to want to take a look from the inside. For that, they need to come to see your father. Korf shook his head in amusement. Boy, he said, I wish I was a Jedi. If you were, you'd probably have to go to war someday. Torles warned. You didn't have to, Korf pointed out. Not yet, Torles said with a grimace. But I could be called up at any moment. The Council merely decided to leave a few Jedi where all for the moment in case of unexpected Separatist moves in our areas. I could go to the scene of trouble anywhere in Wakala or Locust sectors long before they could send someone from Coruscant or one of the major areas. Being a Jedi is never easy and can be downright dangerous. Yeah, but you're real smart, Korf said, clearly distant rumbling. Neither Ward and phase him in the slightest. You're good at figuring out stuff. Logical thinking is hardly the exclusive preserve of Jedi, Torles admonished him. Anyone can learn to put facts together in the proper order. Maybe, Korf said. I still think it's a Jedi thing. Torles smiled, slided his eyes with his hand as he watched the shuttle approach. In point of fact, of course, he hadn't really known the shuttle was coming to the Benali estate, but had merely concluded there was a high probability of it. If it turned out the pilot was merely showing off Spaarti creations to some visiting friend, he was going to look pretty foolish. This might not be a bad thing. Torles spent the past 30 years on Cartao, dispensing wisdom, mediating disputes, and handling the occasional pirate or overseeing crime lords. Some of the locals had come to respect him, others had chosen to hate him, while most had never been more than vaguely aware that Procula's sector even had a resident Jedi Guardian. But never in those 30 years had he run into a case of hero worship like Korf Benali's. In his early days, he would have been highly gratifying, not to mention flattering, to be held in such high esteem from the perspective of his youth. Though he could see the danger lurking behind that kind of unthinking adulation. Even at 12, Korf should be able to recognize a person's weaknesses as well as his strengths. He should be learning how to accept people as they would, not creating a lens of perfection through which to gaze at them. Instead, the boy insisted on regarding him as the ultimate Jedi, tall and strong, wise and kind, and never ever wrong. This particular incident wasn't going to do much to change that perception either. The shuttle passed low over their heads, leaving no doubt that it was indeed making for the private landing pad beside the Benali, the mansion. And as it did so, Torles got a clear look at the company name on the shuttle side. Come on, he said, thinking Korf's of his arm, turning him toward the house. We're going back, Korf asked, frowning. I thought you were going to help me track the Shibi vine back to its roots. We can do that later, Torles told him. Right now, I think we ought to see what these people want to bother. Okay, Korf said, clearly not understanding but accepting Torles' word for it. You're the boss. I'm not the boss, as Torles reminded him as they headed down the hill toward the distant house and shuttle settling onto the pad. I'm just the Jedi, yeah, Korf said offhandedly. Same thing. Torles sighed to himself. Hopefully the boy will go out of it on his own. One of Doriani's more simple amusements these days was to cut off the minutes between the time a droid or servant disappeared into his master's inner sanctum with Doriani's credentials and the time Doriani himself was ushered in. In the case of Lord Bilester Benali, that interval was less than a minute. Either Benali was unusually respectful of Coruscant authority, or else he was too worried about his unexpected visitor to play power games. Master Doriana, Benali said, rising from the massive chair behind the even more massive desk as the protocol droid escorted Doriana into the office. It's a great honor to receive a representative from Supreme Chancellor Palpatine himself. A pleasure to meet you as well, Lord Benali, Doriana said in a return as he walked across the room. I appreciate you giving me some of your time. My pleasure, Benali said, waving Doriana to a chair facing the desk, sitting back down himself. I wish you'd given me notice of your visit. I could have sent a shuttle to meet you, or else directed you to Triv, spaceport, where you could have come over by land speeder. There were reasons for coming into Cartao when you did, Doriana told him, watching the other's face closely, as there were for choosing the particular transport I did. A muscling Benali's cheek twist, so he'd spotted the name on Corsair's shuttle too. Yes, Emil Corsair's, he said. I'm familiar with him. Master Doriana and I assure you the Trade Council is working to rectify it. He waved a hand self-consciously. It's certainly nothing Palpatine needs to involve himself with. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine is the champion of the common citizen, Doriana reminded him. Of course, Benali said hastily, the first hints of precipitation beginning to see in his face. It's just that, he broke off. Yes, Doriana prompted. The cheek muscle twisted again. Let me be honest with you, Benali said. Cartao is trying to keep a low profile in this war against the Separatists. Won't have nearly enough military power to send troops or ships halfway across the galaxy on expeditionary missions. So far, we've mostly escaped official notice. But if Chancellor Palpatine begins taking an interest in some major bureaucratic dispute, that official notice is likely to be drawn or direction. Then he tapped the desk in front of him with his forefinger. And not just from the officials on Coruscant, he added pointedly. The Separatists have so far ignored us, too. I understand your concerns, Doriana said, but you have to understand in turn that no one has the luxury of deciding how a war is going to affect them, nor is anyone permitted to choose how he can best serve in that conflict. Benali's eyes were very steady on Doriana's. You're not here about Corsair at all, are you? He said quietly. Doriana shook his head. It was and is a useful cover story, but no. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine sent me on far more important business. Benali's stony face went even stonier. Spaarti creations. Exactly, Doriana said. The Supreme Chancellor is intrigued by the reports he's heard about this factory where production lines can be changed practically overnight. If the technique can be duplicated, it would mean a great deal for the Republic's war effort. It can't be, Benali said flatly. It's the sock and the fluid tooling system that make it possible. And, as far as we know, the Cartao colony is the only place Quansock live. Thousands of them, I presume. Benali hesitated, the barest fraction of a second as if wondering whether he could get away with a lie. About 50,000, yes, he conceded, apparently deciding not to risk it. But they breed very slowly, and only a small fraction of each generation has the talent that allows them to serve as trillers. Those are the ones who actually manipulate the fluid retooling that makes Spaarti possible. I see, Doriana said, and if he hadn't already really researched the whole operation. Still, the Supreme Chancellor will want me to be absolutely certain. Would it be possible for me to inspect the facilities themselves, quietly and privately? Of course. Benali knew a politely phrased order when he heard it. Of course, he said, getting to his feet. Have a private way into the plant. They were halfway down the corridor leading back toward the landing pad when a boy's voice split the mansion's elegant silence. Hey, Dad! The two men stopped and turned. Hurrying toward them was a young boy about 12 years old, Lord Benali's son. Doriana tentatively identified him. Behind the boy, walking with longer stride and a more measured face, was the final player in today's scheduled drama, Jedi Knight Jafer Torles. Jedi Knight Jafer Torles. Douglas. Cough, Benali said, sounding surprised and a little uncomfortable. I thought you were on weed control this morning. We saw the shuttle, Cough explained, as he trotted up to his father's side, giving Doriana a quick once-over as he arrived. Are you going to the plant for a few minutes? Yes, Benali said. Can I come along? Benali shook his head. Not this time. The boy blinked clearly. That wasn't the answer he'd been expecting. Why not? Business, his father said firmly. Only Master Doriana and I are going. But no arguments, Benali said sternly, shifting his attention away from Cough as the Jedi reached the group. I'd like you to meet Jafer Torles, our local Jedi Guardian. This is Kinman Doriana, Special Advisor to Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. The skin at the corners of the old Jedi's eyes wrinkled slightly at Palpatine's name. Small wonder, the Supreme Chancellor and the Jedi Council had been increasingly at odds with each other over the past few months. Master Torles, Doriana said, nodding. I'm glad you're here. As Lord Benali said, we're going to see the plant. Would you care to accompany us? Cough looked at his father in surprise. But you said, be quiet, Cough. Benali cut him off, looking at Doriana with some surprise of his own. I thought you said this was a private matter. That was before I knew Master Torles. This was in the area, Doriana said, getting into Benali's face. It would be worth the risk, he decided, suddenly, to just see how far the man could be pushed. For that matter, he added, I see no reason why your son shouldn't come too. You will begin moving him into a management position in a few years, won't you? The muscles of Benali's throat tightened, his eyes narrowing dangerously. Lord Lester Benali, the biggest fish in this particular little pond, was unused to having people casually cut the ground out from under him this way. But Doriana understood power too. He held Benali's glare steadily, without challenge or malice, wondering if the other could see far enough past his annoyance to remember who he was dealing with. Apparently, he could. As you wish, he said simply. Follow me. Torles had been in Benali's private tunnel to Spaarti creations only a handful of times, and it never failed to invoke a sense of wonder. The Kwanzak themselves had bored out the long passageway. Lord Benali had once told him, without the use of any machinery, the result had been a rough-hewn tunnel that had perpetually held the rich tang of recently turned dirt. But despite the fresh aroma, he also knew that in the digging process, those same dirt walls had somehow been converted into material as tough and durable as permacrete, and the apparent roughness of the surface hid the same subtle swirls and delicate patterns the Kwanzak diggers had carved into it. Functional, artistic, and by all generally accepted technology, impossible. This was, Torles reflected, a pretty fair description of Spaarti creations itself. The Kwanzak don't want people or vehicles on the strip of grassland between the plant and the Wayland city. Benal explained to Doriana as the land speeder slid silently down the tunnel. They say it upsets them, though we don't know how or why, hence this tunnel. What about the other employees? Doriana asked. The non-Kwanzak ones. How do they get to work? Most of them live on site, Benali said. There's a group apartment cluster along the eastern edge of the plant, between the main building and Outlink 1. For the unmarried workers, the Kwanzak have a cluster of homes caught north of the plant. And between Outlinks 1 and 2, while the non-Quanzoc families live in their own cluster to the northwest, between Outlinks 2 and 3. And how do all of them get to work? Doriana persisted. What tunnels? With more tunnels like this one? There are tunnels leading between the main plant and the Outlinks, Benali said, but those are mainly for cargo and equipment transfer. The workers usually just walk across the lawns to work. He smiled slightly at Doriana's puzzled look. I know. Apparently it's only this one strip of land the Quanzoc insists be left completely open. Again, no one knows why. The tunnel floor began to slope upward, and Torles found himself surreptitiously watching Doriana. The first time he'd taken this trip, he'd naturally expected the tunnel to deposit them into some sort of receiving area, and could still remember his shock when they'd arrived smack in the middle of one of the production areas. Because it might be instructive to see whether Doriana would also be taken by surprise. He was. He kept his face impassive as a section of the ceiling lifted like a drawbridge above them, and the land speeder moved up a ramp into the center of the bustling factory. But Torles could sense the flicker of astonishment behind those expressionless eyes. Interesting endpoint, was all he said as Benali let the land speeder coast to a stop. The Quanzoc like to know what's going on around them, Benali said, climbing out of his seat as the floor swung shut behind them. This is production area 4, where we're currently making specialized harvesting equipment for the marshlands of Kamos. The ground here is too interlaced with vine roots for normal equipment to operate without breaking down every other day. So you're in the business of filling niche markets? Doriana asked. Basically, Benali said, nodding. There isn't enough of that kind of cultivatable marshland in the Republic to justify setting up a permanent assembly line to make the equipment necessary to farm it. But with the Quanzoc system, we can spend a few days or weeks making everything the Kamasi will need for the next year or two. Then we tool and move on to other projects. And where does all this magic retooling take place? Doriana asked. It starts at the main control station, Benali said, pointing towards a round platform rising 2 meters off the floor between 2 of the assembly lines. The one for this area is over there. They crossed to the platform, Benali guiding his guests through the maze of conveyors, transport cars, and human and alien workers. Climbing up the steps, they found themselves beside a long console that had always reminded Torles of a cross between an elongated volcano and a very muddy hillside, and with a segmented waterfall of pale green paste oozing ponderously and continuously along various sections of the slope. And in front of the collecting basin lounged 5 Quanzoc, their chitinous outer cells gleaming in the sunbeams streaming in through the skylight, 3 floors directly above them. Their long, multi-jointed legs tapped out syncopated rhythms on the thick grass that covered the entire top of the platform, keeping time to music apparently only they could hear. Preview. These are 5 of the Quasic trillers, Benali said, keeping his voice low. Whatever they do to that fluid flow will affect most of those machines you see here. They can do all the retooling from here? Doriana asked. No, each machine needs its own adjustments, Benali told him. They are moving trillers assigned to each area for that purpose. Depending on the complexity involved, a given production can be retooled in anywhere from 2 to 8 hours.
Preview.
Your basic overnight altercations, Ms. Doriana said, nodding. Very literally overnight, Benali, he agreed. The Kranzak will do minor adjustments during the daylight hours. That's why this group is on duty. In case one of the machines drifts off true and needs to be recalibrated. But they'll only do a major retooling after it's completely dark outside, and you don't know why. Frankly, we know next to nothing about the Kranzak, Benali admitted. They breathe oxygen, their diet is mostly local vegetables and grains, except that it all has to be enriched with extra magnesium and cobalt. And they like to farm and dig and create artistic objects. Fortunately, marshland farm equipment falls into that last category. Farm equipment and everything else, Benali said. They seem to love using Spaarti to make things. He led them back down to the main floor. You say this is production area 4. This is production area 4, Doriana said. How many others are there? We currently have 27 operating areas, Benali told him. 8 of them are larger and more complex than this one, while the others are comparable or a bit smaller. I'd like to see one of the larger ones. Benali's lips compressed briefly, but he merely nodded. Of course, this way. They visited 2 other lines before Doriana decided he'd seen enough. That will do, he said as Benali started to lead them on to the next area. Is there an office where we can talk more privately? Benali frowned sideways at him. What is there to talk about? He asked, his voice dark with suspicion. Surely you see now that this technique can't be duplicated elsewhere. A private office? If you please, Doriana repeated. Benali took a deep breath, and it may be best if the boy leaves us now. Doriana added. Benali's eyes hardened. Suddenly, it seemed he'd had enough of being led around by the nose. I have no secrets from my son, Doriana, he bit out. If you have anything to say to me, you can say it in his presence. Doriana let his lip twitch as if he finessed the other into precisely this result. If you insist, he said. Benali, he nodded shortly. In here. He led the way to a room marked schematic plotting. Ordered out the human and Duros who'd been working on a pair of large plotting boards inside and keyed the door closed behind them. Swinging one of the 2 chairs around for his visitor, he hiked himself up onto a half-sitting, half-leaning posture against one of the boards. Let's hear it, he said gruffly. It's quite simple, Doriana said, sitting down and gazing calmly at the man now towering over him. As you said, Spaarti Creations is one of a kind. Since we can't duplicate it, we'll have to use it as is. Benali's expression didn't even twitch.
Preview.
He'd already guessed where this whole visit was going. Impossible, he said. This is the single viable business of an entire sub-minority species. The Kranzak, and as such, it comes under Senate Directive 422. Governmental interference with its operation is strictly and expressly prohibited. Desperate times call for desperate measures, Doriana countered, pulling a data card from an inside pocket. Senate Directive 3591, authorizing Supreme Chancellor Palpatine unlimited authority to commandeer any resource or group of resources he feels necessary for a swift conclusion of hostilities. He held the card out to Benali. Beginning this evening, Spaarti Creations will be turning its complete facilities over to the manufacturer of a new design of cloning tanks. Slowly, Benali took the data card and slid it into his datapad. For a long minute, the only sound in the room was the muted din of the assembly line floor outside the office's transparent canopy as he read and reread the directive. "You can't do this," he said when he finally tore his eyes away from the text. "Weren't you listening to what I said back in my office? You take over the Spaarti, and it'll be a matter of time before the Separatists come in. Point 1, you have no choice in the matter," Doriana said, letting his voice harden. "The Senate's directive is clear, and the Supreme Chancellor's decision has been made. Point 2, there's no reason for the Separatists to hear anything about this. If we do our job properly, no one will know that crates marked farm equipment or tunneling gear actually contain cloning cylinders. As for my presence on here, I've already established the cover story that I'm intervening on Emil Kusig's behalf. What about my workers?" Benali countered. "Not counting the trillers, we employ nearly 13,000 humans and aliens here. How are you going to guarantee that they will all keep quiet? They can't talk about what they don't know," Doriana said, "and in approximately 4 hours, you'll be pulling every one of them off the floor and confining them to their homes." "Oh, I will? Will I?" Benali said sarcastically. "And how exactly do you expect me to justify that?" "No justification needed," Doriana said calmly. "Medical quarantine is required by law for an outbreak of Palladian fever." Benali's mouth dropped a centimeter. Palladian fever. His eyes darted to the canopy. "What have you done?" "Calm yourself, Lord Benali," Doriana soothed. "The 3 humans and 2 aliens I treated and passed." "You did what?" Benali snarled. "You deliberately infected them?" "I said calm yourself," Doriana repeated, putting in an answered voice. "Of course I didn't infect them. The incubation period for Palladian fever is 4 weeks. What I did do was give them something that will mimic the disease, creating a convincing set of symptoms. They're not in any danger, and neither is anyone else. But no one will know that for at least those 4 weeks." Benali had the look of someone chewing on a sour mefac. "And while they're all in quarantine, you'll naturally be offering me a caretaker unit, he growled. It's that or close down the plant entirely," Doriana pointed out. "The clans are being cold-blooded or immune from Palladian fever, so they can continue to work as usual. This is completely unconscionable," Torles spoke up. "This is war, Master Torles," Doriana reminded him. "Not only war, but a war of survival." From the corner of the room, Doriana had been wondering when the Jedi would say something involuntarily. He wondered if perhaps the old man had dozed off and missed some of the conversation. "Excuse me?" he said, dribbling to face the old man. "This is a gross violation of every accepted standard of behavior," Torles insisted. "I cannot and will not stand by and be party to any of it. This is war, Master Torles, Doriana reminded him. "Not only war, but a war of survival. If we lose, the Republic is finished." "I don't care," Torles said flatly, and I can tell you right now the Jedi Council will not stand by and allow you to terrify the people of Cartao with fear of a non-existent plague. Perhaps the Jedi Council sees things differently than you do, Doriana said, pulling a second data card from his pocket. Here are their instructions ordering you to cooperate with me and my people. He lifted his eyebrows. You do still acknowledge the authority of the Council, don't you? Silently, with the same complete lack of enthusiasm with which Lord Benali had taken the first data card, Torles accepted the second. Good, Doriana said briskly, getting to his feet. Then all that remains is for you to return home and prepare for 5 of your workers to have suddenly slunk over with dizziness and fever. And you, I suppose, will do all the rest, Benali said bitterly. Of course, Doriana said. That's why I'm here. The first worker began complaining of dizziness at precisely 5 minutes after the predicted time. 9 minutes after that, he was being examined by the plant medic. He suddenly collapsed, twitching and groaning. The second worker was more stoic, and was still at his station 15 minutes later when he hit the floor. 3 minutes after that, Lord Benali ordered the plant evacuated. Ah, Doriana. The solid face, the stolid face hovering above Doriana's hollow projector greeted him. You have news. The plant is ready, Commander Waston, Doriana said. You may land at your convenience. Excellent, Waston said approvingly. And in less than 1 day, you do admirable work. I do what the Supreme Chancellor commands, Doriana said with just a hint of warning. In these days of turmoil and suspicion, it never hurt to remind people as to where his loyalties lie. No more, no less. Of course, Waston agreed calmly, as do we all. Yes, Doriana agreed, glancing out the office canopy at the darkening skylight halfway across the room. It's nearly nightfall, which is when the Kwanzaa do all their serious work. How soon can I expect your people? The first transports are on its way, with the chief techs and operational schematics aboard, Waston said. They'll be there in an hour. Good, Doriana said. I'll make sure the Kwanzaa are ready. They've already been informed they'll be doing a complete retooling tonight. Are you sure a 2,000 unit contingent will be enough? Waston asked, his forehead wrinkling slightly. I've been doing some research myself, and it looks to me like the plant usually requires over 6 times that number. We're supposed to be a caretaker unit, reminded him. It wouldn't look right if we completely repopulated the plant. Yes, but besides, the majority of these 13,000 workers are involved with maintenance, shipping, and raw material movement. Doriana cut him off. If the Supreme Chancellor decides to extend the operations, we can bring in personnel to handle those aspects. But now, let's concentrate on our mission to create and stockpile the cloning cylinders we need to create more troops. Yes, sir, Waston muttered. You'll have your schematics in an hour, with the rest of the transports following at 30-minute intervals. I'll look forward to seeing them, Commander, Doriana said. Doriana, out. He broke the connection, lowering the hollow projector onto his lap as he again looked out of the office. It was an eerie feeling, sitting alone in the middle of such a huge room, rather like being the last living cell in a dead body, he thought. Across by the area's control platform, a small motion caught his eye. A group of Kwanzaa were wandering around, their footsteps seeming to stutter as they walked, still beating out their silent music. He decided, perhaps, humming along on auditory wavelengths humans couldn't hear. Strange aliens, strange technology, but apart from that, a very straightforward job. Lifting his hollow projector again, he punched in a new code. The connection this time took considerably longer to make. Doriana forced himself to wait patiently, watching the pans of the distant skylight fading toward black. And then, with a suddenness that somehow always startled him. The ghastly hologram image appeared. Report, the hooded figure ordered quietly. Spaarti clone. The Spaarti Creations plant has been cleared, Lord Sidious, Doriana said. The First Republic techs will be landing in an hour with the rest of the techs, workers, and troops arriving during the night. How many troops will the Doriana hesitated. I'm not sure, he admitted, bracing himself. Darth Sidious didn't like it when his people didn't have all the answers to his questions. Palpatine gave that part of the planning to Commander Waston, and he's been very secretive about his contingent's exact makeup. It can't be more than 1,000 clone troopers, possibly as low as 500, and with Waston and a few other officers in command. To his relief, Sidious merely nodded. Waston has ambitions of his own, and thinks he knows how to play the game, he said contemptuously. No matter, even 1,000 troops would not be a problem. What of the owner and the Jedi? They're not happy, but they bow to the inevitable, Doriana said. The only problem may come if Torles decides to check with the Jedi Council directly to confirm the order. They weren't enthusiastic about the idea in the first place, as I told you. And if he catches Yoda or Windu at a bad time, one of them might decide to unilaterally reverse the decision. Even if they so dared, all Torles can do at this point is make noise, Sidious assured him, a malice edge to his voice. No, all is going according to plan. You have done well. Thank you, my lord, Doriana said, feeling the warmth of belief and pride trickling through him. Any new orders? Not yet, Sidious said. Continue as you are and allow the plan to work itself out. He smiled sardonically. Report again when things become interesting. I will, my lord, Doriana promised. The hooded head nodded, and the image vanished. Taking a deep breath, Doriana stood back, sliding the hollow projector back into his belt pouch. So, the chance cue had been thrown, and the game was in motion. The next move would be the Republic's. He paused in the office doorway, listening to the heavy thinking, as he always did at moments like this, about the incredibly thin tightrope he had chosen to walk. Palpatine had no idea that his trusted aide and advisor was in fact the agent of a Dark Lord of the Sith, working in the shadows to destroy everything the Supreme Chancellor stood for. Palpatine never discovered the truth. He shook his head firmly. No, that would never happen. Sidious was too powerful, and Doriana himself too clever, to ever allow such a useful relationship to be ruined. He headed across the empty floor, his footsteps echoing from the high ceiling. Benali would be waiting at the plant's main entrance for the incoming Republic force. The honored representative of Supreme Chancellor Palpatine should be waiting with him. It's not fair, Koff roused at throwing a small stone at a group of flutteries he's darting among a cluster of flowers at the crest of the hill. How can they just come in and take over like this? We're in the middle of a war, Torles reminded him. Everyone has to make sacrifices. Torles. I'll bet you Palpatine isn't making any sacrifices, Koff said with a sniff, picking up another stone and heaving it after the first. Torles reached out to the force and the stone stopped abruptly in midair. I understand that you're angry, Koff. He reproved the boy, lowering the stone to the ground, but that's no reason to take it out on innocent flutteries. Koff hissed through his teeth. I know, he conceded reluctantly, looking up into the cloudless sky. It's just that... Oh, look, here comes another one. Torles peered upward. In the distance, a black speck had appeared, dropping from space toward them. Look at the bright side, he shrugged, he suggested. Maybe it's a transport coming to take them all away. Yeah, right, Koff grunted, stooping and picking up another stone. Torles watched him wearily, but the boy merely began fiddling with it. Dad would have said something if he were about to clear out. He would have started smiling again. Besides, it's only been a week, and that fancy pants Doriana said they'd be here for 4. Master Doriana, Torles corrected him automatically, and you shouldn't always look on the negative side of things. Considering the progress they're making, they could very well decide to cut their time short. Why would they? Corf countered. If they're getting so much done, why quit? That was a good question, Torles had to admit. And if he could come up with a good answer, he might actually be able to argue Doriana conversely he might honestly be able to argue Doriana onto precisely that path. Think, Jedi, he admonished himself. After all, meditation had been his primary job for the past 30 years. Surely he could come up with a way to hammer a compromise out of this situation. And then, suddenly, he had it. Maybe. Where's your father? He asked. In the plant, Croft said, frowning up at him. What is it? Maybe the white lever to use on Doriana, Torles said, pulling out his comm link. Master Doriana? I stand corrected, Torles said wildly as he keyed in Lord Bellami's frequency. So what's the plan? Croft asked. Come on, tell me. What's the probability that has to concern Master Doriana the most? Torles asked rhetorically. Answer that the Separatists will find out about this and move in to stop it. Okay, Croft agreed, frowning. So all we have to do is convince him that 4 weeks will be pushing his luck, Torles said, and frowning in turn. The comm link seemed to be taking an unusually long time to connect, because if the Separatists do figure out Spaarti is lost to him forever, Dooku's people will blockade Cartao, and that'll be the end of it. Croft made a face. Yuck. Yuck indeed, Torles agreed. If, on the other hand, Doriana takes this in small bites, sneaking his people in for just a few days at a time, he may be able to keep the whole process going indefinitely. You mean he could be taking over the planet once every month or so? Croft asked doubtfully. Boy, I don't think Dad will go for that. He will if it comes to a choice between Doriana's annoyance and a Separatist blockade, Torles said, turning the comm link off and then on again, the skin on the back of his neck starting to tingle. Something was very wrong here. He caught his breath, twisting his head to look upward as he silently cursed his lack of attention. The black speck they'd seen earlier was much closer, dropping towards them like an impatient asteroid. And at this distance, Torles could see this ship's all too distinct double-wing silhouette. What is that? Croft asked, his voice tight. A Trade Federation C-9979 landing ship, Torles bit out, jabbing one last useless time at the comlink's controls. Oh no, Croft breathed, fumbling at his belt for his own comlink. We have to warn Dad. We can't, Torles told him, shoving his comlink back into its pouch. They've knocked out the system. Then we have to get over there, Croft said, turning back toward the house. Come on, wait a minute, Torles said, catching the boy's arm, his mind racing. By the time they made it back to the house and down the tunnel, the invasion would be well underway. What they needed was some way to send a message now to the people inside. What? Croft demanded. Come on, quiet, Torles ordered him. Let me think. Above them, the C-9979 settled into a high hover position directly over the plant, and perhaps 29 craft erupted from its leading wing. STAPs, STAPs, he recognized them. Nimble flying platforms carrying a single battle droid each. They swept outward from the landing ship in ever-increasing spirals, searching for defenses or other threats that might interfere with a landing or troop deployment. And 3 of them were at this very minute flying over the forbidden stretch of grassland between the Benali estate and Spaarti creations. It was a long shot, he knew, in every sense of the word, but it was all he had. Pulling out his lightsaber, he ignited it and locked the activation stud, picking out the staff that seemed to be drifting closest to where he and Calf landed. Were standing. Judging the droid's speed and distance as best he could, he stretched out through the force and hurled his lightsaber toward it. The droid, its attention on the ground around the plant, probably never even saw it coming. The spinning weapon shot past its stab. The brilliant green blade slicing through the power cell housing just above the footlocks. With a flat electronic exclamation of surprise, the droid machine dropped out of the sky and thudded to the ground, on toward the drowned comrade. Metallic heads swiveling back and forth as they searched the source of the attack. Run! And Torles ordered Koff, as he called the lightsaber back towards him. Back to the house in the safe room. We've done everything we can here. But what about Dad? Koff asked anxiously, moving a couple of reluctant steps down the hill. I'll take one of the land speeders down the tunnel as soon as you're safe, Torles told him. The droids had spotted him now. The staff's twin blasters were starting to track. Go on, I'll be right behind you. A pair of blaster bolts shot past him, uncomfortably close. All right, Koff said, finally turning and taking off. But I'm going with you, he shouted back over his shoulder. The land speeders won't work without somebody from the family in them. The lightsaber made it back to Torles' hand, and before about a half a second before the droids finally found the reins. But for a Jedi, half a second was more than enough. The lightsaber blurred in its grip, twisting like a hunting in Mactier, as it intercepted the blaster bolts and sent them bouncing back again. A pair of volleys later, there were 3 ruined stabs, and droids lying crumpled in the forbidden zone. Closing down his lightsaber, Torles turned and ran, following the boy now halfway to the mansion. He'd done all he could to warn those inside the plant. Now it was time to join them. He could only hope he would be there ahead of the droids. I hope you realize just how incredible this is, Commander Waston commented as he handed the datapad back to the tech. We projected that the raw materials we stockpiled would last a full
Preview.
and actual fact and present production rates we're going to have to resupply after 2. I'm not surprised, Doriana said. Spaarti Creations already had something of a reputation for doing the impossible. It's an incredible resource, Lord Benali, Waston agreed, turning towards Benali. You should be very proud. Benali didn't answer. He'd been increasingly silent lately. Doriana had noted as he watched his beloved manufacturing plant turning out rows and rows of cloning tanks. Waston either hadn't noticed or didn't care. I don't know if Master Doriana mentioned it, but these are a more advanced model of cloning tank. I don't know if Master Doriana mentioned it, but these are a more advanced model of cloning tank than the design they used on Camino. The commander went on, turning his head slowly as he surveyed the bustling assembly area. That's the main problem with keeping yourselves isolated. You don't keep up with modern technological advances. These should be able to turn out clones in 1/10 of the time the Kaminoans needed to do the job. We set a few million of these online. We get a few million of these online, and Separatists can kiss the precious droid armies goodbye. He frowned suddenly. What's going on with them? Who? Doriana asked, following the other's line of sight to the area's control platform. The 5 Kwanzak on duty were vibrating like a set of bad repulsor lifts, their hides flickering with rapid color changes beneath the translucent coatings. Something's wrong, Benali declared, snapping out of his sulk. Brushing past Waston, he sprinted to the platform, taking the stairs 2 at a time. He was leaning over the nearest alien when Doriana and Waston caught up with him. His eyes narrowed as he studied the alien's changing color pattern. Up close, Doriana could see that the alterations were more varied and subtle than he'd realized. They're upset about something, Benali muttered. A violation of some taboo. You can read that? Waston asked. I didn't realize they could. Shut up! Doriana cut him off. Waston turned a glare toward him. The grassland, Benali said abruptly. Someone or something is on the south grassland strip. Is that all? Waston said, sounding disgusted. Probably some stupid kid from the city. No, Benali insisted. Everyone in this part of Cartao knows better. It's either your people, he broke off, looking sharply at Doriana, or the Separatists, Doriana finished for him, grabbing for his comlink. Commander, for the Lord. Ridiculous, Waston insisted, but he had his comlink out and was tapping at the key. How could they have? I'm not getting anything, Doriana said, turning the channel. Commander? They've been blocked, Waston said, the skepticism abruptly gone from his voice. What do we do? Benali asked nervously, looking around as if he expected to see a droid army clawing its way up out of the drainage grills. We prepare to meet the enemy, Waston said, his voice icy calm. Drawing his blaster, he aimed it at the ceiling and squeezed the trigger. Even amid the loud auditory mosaic of factory noises, the distinctive sizzle of a stun blast easily cut through the noise. Waston fired 3 more times, paused, then fired twice. Doriana strained his ears. It was from the next chamber over he heard the faint sound of an answering signal. The alert's been being passed, Waston said, putting away his comlink but keeping his blaster in his hand. Come on, my command centers in the next assembly area. The clone trooper lieutenant and the senior master tech were waiting when the 3 of them arrived at the commands to the former standing stiffly to attention, and the latter looking almost comical as he nervously shuffled his weight back and forth between his feet. Report, Waston ordered, glancing at the status schematic that showed troop disposition.
Preview.
1 Trade Federation C-9979 currently hovering over the plant, the lieutenant replied. Approximately 20 Zaps running air support. 3 have crashed to the south. 1 Trade Federation Luahok class control core ship has appeared over the horizon. No other vehicles currently in the Texan lanes. It's not bad, Benali. How bad? Benali muttered. Bad enough, Waston told him. A single C-9979 can carry 11 MIT large transport vehicles. With 112 rattle droids each, and 114 AAT battle tanks. Plus, the core ship up there probably has another couple more C-9979s in reserve if they get impatient. Benali had actually gone pale. You're saying there could be over 3,000 battle droids out there, plus all those tanks? Actually, if you add in the AAT crews, we're talking more like 5,000 droids, Doriana muttered. So, 5,000 droids, Benali bit out. And you have, what,
Preview.
900 men? Waston smiled tightly. I have 900 clone supers, he corrected. There's a big difference, Lieutenant. Do we have spotters in position? All doors are being watched, the clone trooper confirmed. Whenever they put down, we'll know it. Fortunately, there aren't many possibilities. Waston muttered, looking at his status board again. The east and west doors are the only ones with the kind of clearance outside that a C-9979 needs. Agreed, the lieutenant said. The troops are currently layering at both of them. What does that mean, layering? Benali asked. They're forming successive defensive lines. And from these doors inward, Waston told him. What about the north and the northeast entrances? We're not leaving them unprotected, are we? Wait a minute, Benali interrupted again. Defense lines inside the plant? You can't fight in here. Well, we sure can't fight outside, Waston pointed out. Now without air support. Then you're not fighting at all, Benali said flatly. The equipment in here is delicate and irreplaceable. Waston snorted. You'd rather just won your plant plant over to the Separatists? If those are my only two options, yes, Benali said, his voice icy. Maybe you don't understand what this plant means to Cartao and the west of the sector. Just a minute, the lieutenant cut him off, his helmet cocking slightly to the side. They've lifted the comlink blocking, broadcasting a message on all public channels. Washington suddenly had his comlink out. Public forces, typically Morty voice came from the speaker. You are surrounded and outnumbered. Surrender or we will be forced to destroy you. I've heard that before, Washington countered, giving a set of hand signals to the lieutenant. The other nodded and turned away, and Doriana could hear the faint sound of his voice through his helmet as he gave rapid orders. But I'll humor you. What do you want? We want Spaarti creations, Incident Amorian said. You will all step outside the west door and lay down your weapons. Washington switched out the comlink. West door, he told the lieutenant, conformed. The other replied. And the C-9979 is setting down in the cleared area between the forest and the plant. We're shifting troops to respond. Washington nodded. Let's go. Benali caught his arm as he started to leave. Commander, I want to fight in my plant, he warned. If necessary, I'll open the doors to throw to them myself. You do, and you'll be executed for treason, Washington growled his hand. Benali turned to Doriana, his face twisted in frustration. Doriana, Lord Benali is right, Commander, Doriana said. Spaarti creations is too valuable to risk damaging it. Washington turned furious eyes on him, but at the same time, Lord Benali, Commander Washington cannot simply let his civilians fall into enemy hands, Doriana went on. I'm afraid I don't see a clear answer here. Benali's lips compressed into a thin, bloodless line. What if I take the text through the tunnel to my house, he suggested. Can you hold the droids off outside long enough for me to get them all clear? We can try, Washington said, studying his face a moment and then turning to your tech. Get your people to the assembly, the area 4 for evacuation. Lieutenant, let's go. The two of them headed down the floor toward the west door at a fast run. Doriana waited long enough to make sure Benali and the senior tech were indeed making for area 4, then set off after the soldiers. It was, after all, only proper that he should at least stay long enough to watch such brave soldiers begin in their last battle. Well, the west door was, in fact, more like a major vehicle hangar than a simple doorway, consisting of a large transfer room behind a pair of sliding doors big enough to handle anything a modern manufacturing plant could ever need. Doriana reached the transfer room to find that the huge doors had been opened to crack, with Washington and the lieutenant peering through the gap. Throughout the transfer room, hundreds of white armored clone troopers were moving purposefully around, settling into positions near the doors and behind some of the heavy crate-moving in vehicles parked along the walls, or setting up a semicircle of pod-mounted laser cannon on the floor a dozen meters back from the doors. What's happening? He asked as he crossed to the Washington. They've landed, Washington said, sounding distracted as he peered out the crack. He had donned a clone trooper command link headset. Doriana noted, probably listening to a running status commentary from the rest of his officers, doing their little sensor scans to make sure the ground is clear of mines. What's the plan? Doriana asked, taking a cautious peek through between the doors. He even set firmly on the ground. The landing ship loomed over them like an angry metal storm cloud. We stopped them, of course, Washington said shortly. At the very least, we make them pay dearly for every square centimeter. What are you talking about? Doriana asked, frowning. Aren't you listening back there? You can't fight in here. Washington swiveled his head to look at him. I thought you just said that to get Benali off our backs. Absolutely not, Doriana said. My position was exactly as stated. We can't allow the text to fall into Separatist hands. They know too much about our technology. But neither can we allow the plant to be damaged. So what you're saying is that I should move out into the open, Watson demanded bluntly. That I should stand there and watch my troops get slaughtered just to buy Benali time to evacuate the text? I'm sorry, Doriana said in a low, sincere voice. I know that puts you in an impossible position, but I'm afraid we have no choice. We do have a choice, Watson snapped. And you think, he paused. What? All right, turn him on. What is it? Doriana asked. Your Jedi's are wise, along with Benali's son, Watson said briefly. Master Torles. Yes, this is Watson. For perhaps a half a minute he listened, his forehead wrinkled in concentration. Then surprisingly smiled. Understood, he said. We'll give it a try, Lieutenant. We'll give it a try. Lieutenant? I'm on it, sir, the clone trooper said. Watson turned back to Doriana. Maybe we do have a choice, he said. Defense line. Configure for inverse hailstorm. Target on my command. And get these doors open. With a ponderous rumble, the heavy doors began to slide slowly to the sides. It's time to get to cover, Doriana, Watson said, gesturing to the side. This way. A few seconds later, they were crossed behind a large cargo truck parked alongside the side wall. What's going on? Doriana asked, trying to keep the sudden misgivings out of his voice. This was suddenly not going the way he'd planned. Won't this open us up to a full-scale assault? It might, Watson agreed. Or it might let us come up with a different ending for this game. That sounds distinctly ominous. Is this what the Jedi said to do? Doriana probed carefully. No, this part was my idea, Watson said. Master Torles simply reminded me of another of our objectives. He craned his neck. There they go. Doriana eased an eye around the trunk's push plate. Outside, the C-9979's heavy clamshell deployment doors were sliding open, the foot ramp starting to slide down toward the ground. In the relative darkness behind the doors, he could see the slightly bulbous noise and black cannon of a MTT, the armored droid transport, waiting in the landing pedestal. Stand by, Watson ordered calmly. Target is starboard. Laser compensator. Doriana frowned, but before he could ask, the MTT gave a brief snort of cooling system ground vents and began to slide forward toward the ramp. Fire, Watson said calmly, and with a thunder of weaponry that echoed deafeningly through the huge room, the clone troopers opened fire. Doriana squinted into the glare of hundreds of energy weapons focused their fury on the thick armor behind the MTT's left. The most blaster cannonball turned, wincing at the noise and the waves of heat that rolled over him. The MTT's armor was incredibly thick, he knew, but the transport designers could never have anticipated a situation where so much firepower would be focused on such a small spot. The sun-bright glare around the power capacitor began to diffuse outward as the case-hardened metal alloy vaporized into superheated plasma. And barely 2 seconds into the assault, the Republic weapons burnt through the armor to the high-energy capacitor behind it. The leftmost front of the MTT vanished in a gigantic fireball that waked its way upwards to bellow across the leading edge of the C-979's forward wing. A series of smaller blasts erupted from behind the first as secondary systems went up a chain reaction. A few seconds later, with an ear-splitting scream, the repulsor lips disintegrated,
Preview.
and the blackened shell that had once been a fully loaded MTT collapsed onto the ramp, completely blocking the vehicles waiting behind it. "That's it!" Watson shouted over the pandemonium, a savage grin on his face. "All units withdraw." He grabbed Dorian's arm. "Come on, Doriana." Anna, they didn't stop running until they were two assembly areas into the plant, and the noise outside had faded to a dull roar. "Clever," Doriana said, breathing hard as Watson slowed them down to a fast jog. "You blocked the exit ramp, and they stymied
Preview.
named until they can clear out the wreckage. But what exactly did it gain you?" "Options, of course," Watson told him, glancing back over his shoulder. Doriana looked, too, to see the clone troopers following in an orderly retreat. "Before we did that, there would have been no way to retreat without bringing the battle into the plant, which you had forbidden us to do. We would have had to stand and die." He gestured ahead of them with his blaster. "Now we should have time to get through that tunnel of Benali's and go to ground." Doriana felt his lip twitch. 900 clone troopers,
Preview.
ready and waiting to harass the Separatist army. This was not how it was supposed to have gone. So what exactly did Torles this tell you? Watson threw him a smile. "You'll see. Come on, and save your breath for running." They stood on the hill at the edge of the Benali estate. Torles, Benali himself, Doriana, and Commander Watson, the latter now disguised in civilian clothing. "So that's it, is it?" Benali asked. "For now, yes," Torles told him, gazing across the grassy strip that lay between them and the Spaarti creations as the pinks and yellows of sunset began to fade from the western sky, and the shadows from the smoldering hulks of a half-dozen AAT battle tanks stretched across the forbidden grassland. "My compliments to your gunners," he added. "It wasn't hard," Watson said grimly. "Standard Trade Federation attack procedure always includes throwing a cordon around the target zone. All we had to do was set our ambush and make sure we dropped the ones into place that would irritate the Kranzak the most." "Yes," Torles muttered, feeling a twinge of guilt. It had been his idea, and it had been necessary, but he still didn't much like the fact that he deliberately caused distress and discomfort to sentient beings. Especially sentient beings who had nothing to do with the chaos now swirling around them. I just hope it works," Doriana murmured. "It will," Torles assured him. "The Trillers aren't even going to be able to relax until those hulks are removed, let alone retool the plant for anything the Separatists want to build here." Watson grunted. "Let's hope they don't figure it out until our reinforcements get here," he said. "Then we'll see how good they are. As long as we don't destroy the plant in the process," Benali warned. "We'll do what we can," Watson promised, "but that's up to the Separatists now." Torles felt his throat tighten, the fading light in the sky mirroring his own darkening mood. Because even if the Spaarti survived, the thing he'd feared for so long had already happened. The war had come to Cartao.